How's it going, guys? So this is going to be the rebuild video. If you haven't watched our last video, there's some carnage, needless to say, and we gotta kind of go through this front end again and get us ready for Pumpkin Bash, because that's coming up right away. So make sure you check out 403 Street Driven's Instagram. He has a lot of details on this event. I do as well. But if you're wanting to drive or you want to spectate, please let me know ASAP, because it's coming up fast, and we gotta get this car ready for a little special announcement that's coming up. But I won't share too much news on that. But we're gonna rip this apart and assess the damage and redo this front end so we can keep shredding with the homies. So a little time lapse coming up and rip this all apart. Once little Malcolm's out of the way, I'll show you the damage.
Sorry, Dad.
It's all good. We stripped it apart pretty quick. Good thing we both know this car like the back of our hand. Really though, it's not that bad. The worst of it is on the front. Standing back, I thought maybe the shock tower is pushed, but from my eyes reference, I don't think it is. The upper rad support is definitely kinked up and the bottom rad support is pushed in, so I'm thinking it's mostly just front end damage. As you can see, this frame rail a little better now. She's actually kinked in, and like, I'm surprised how friggin' strong this is, because we tried to pull it and it would not move. So I'm gonna spin the car around and start making some sparks fly. We're gonna have to cut a lot of this off. Like, even looking back here, there's no kind of imperfections or any kind of crumpling going on, so this is a good sign. This is another weak spot on S13s. Guys will run bracing here just to keep this part from ever separating, but this whole chassis has been stitch welded, and I think that's probably a good thing. But what I'm thinking of doing is we're gonna cut it right here on both sides. That way we can manipulate this upper rad support a little bit easier, and then we're going to cut the lower rad support right off and address this frame rail and make a decision whether we're going to try to straighten it or cut it back to here. It's just hard to say without... once it's cut, we'll see how bad it is, and if I can get it straight again, I'll just do like a little fish plate there, make it strong again. So yeah, let's spin this car around and make some sparks fly. Getting your car ready for some open heart surgery here. Try to keep it as clean as you can. We don't want to put blood all over the window, do we? Wrap the engine up, cover the glass, and I'm just going to start cutting shit off. But we got her span around, and looking at it when it's naked, it's actually not that bad. Could be a lot worse. Just gives me a chance to improve my fab work even more. So start cutting some shit off here. Persuasion of steel doesn't always go that easy. It doesn't like to really be bent without some brute force, but it's not a frame machine by any means. But we did get a little crafty with what we're doing here. So basically the car's up on jack stands, and that upper rad support right there was noticeably pushed out of whack. So what we did was put a pipe clamp or a pipe stand under this side, because we knew it was pretty close, and a pipe stand over here to kind of hold it from just sucking the whole side of the car down. This area and right here took most of the blunt, so that's what we were trying to get back level. Using a 2-ton come along and some anchors to my floor, we were able to suck it down within about 2 degrees of the rear firewall. So that's pretty damn close to where it was to begin with. Might be hard to see it in the video, but just standing back and looking, it already looks 100 times better. So basically gonna have to rebuild the frame rails from this section forward and we can just suck that upper rad support back down and kind of tie it all together. But we're going to be building off of here and just making a whole new lower rad support and trying to keep this upper one so that we're not creating too much work for ourselves. These tension rods seem to be okay, maybe pulled out a little bit, but I think we can also get them back to where they usually are and where they need to be, and then we can really just start building this car back. All things considered, this is going really smooth. We're kind of on a tight schedule with the pumpkin bash coming up. We have a lot of things to do in a short period of time, so me and Malcolm are giving her, and we should have this car back together shortly. So that worked out. Some redneck frame pulling. Anyway, I'm gonna do some brainstorming, get the welder set up, and start building this front end again. Got a little carried away, forgot to turn the GoPro on, but we're making progress. So upper rad support is pretty close to where it needs to be. I wanted to get some tube tied to the frame rail so that we can just kind of suck it down a bit more and put it back to where it needs to be for good. So typically on this last setup, I can throw a picture for reference of my tube front, but my old tube front didn't have these tubes running inside the frame rails. And typically what I like to do is cap the end of the frame rail, just your normal cap. Don't want to go too thick because the rest of your frame rail will just get bent under impact. So not too thick a base plate. Blow a hole so that you can slide your slip fit into the frame rail. So I don't know if you can see that in there. This tube is actually sliding into the frame rail, probably up to there. And then I'll drill a couple of relief holes so I can get spot welds on the sides and the top. And then that just kind of stiffens up the frame rail, because these are technically crumple zones and the car is meant to basically save you under impact, so things will crumple. So yeah, we got a good reference point going on here. These are extremely long and they're gonna get cut down. It's just easier to make them level and make sure everything's square when you have a longer length of tubes. So I'd say we're making good progress. I'm pretty gassed from the weekend still and kind of dragging my ass a little bit, but that being said, we're still making progress, and I'm happy with where we're at so far. I think by the end of the day, just like to get these uprights in here, and then for our lower rad support, I'm gonna do kind of like a U from each side. Just tie everything together from that side down, power brace back up, and that'll keep everything nice and tight. And then we'll start building a bash bar once the rad's back in and the headlights are all positioned. We can start coming up with a new bash bar design. And then that being said, again, if you haven't seen any of my other videos, these are slip fits. So this is 1 3/4 DOM 120 wall, I think, or even 095. Basically I take 1.5 DOM and slip it through. Then I use like a 1/4 inch pin to kind of hold the bash bar in. A 1/4 inch pin, you're thinking that's not much, and you're right, it's not much. It's enough to pull a car out of a ditch and strap it down and everything to a trailer. But my whole theory is under impact that those pins will shear and take most of the impact, and you have a bit of wiggle room being that it's a slip fit, so it'll just kind of shove the bash bar farther into the tube, as opposed to shoving all that inertia into your frame. So I mean, we kind of tested that last weekend, not by choice, but Raymond's chassis seems to be good. So like I said, I didn't have that design on this car. This car actually had a tube front that I did for a client previously, so I was just building off of what I had already done, and he wasn't too big into drifting or anything, so yeah, needless to say, I just didn't have the proper slip fit design, and my old bash bar was just built using stuff I had laying around the shop. So this time around we're gonna make something a bit more sturdy, and hopefully we can keep this chassis alive for more years to come. So just cope this guy up here. Everything I do is for the most part by hand. I don't have a coping machine. I was taught by an old pipeliner how to cope big inch pipe, and just kind of applied that to a small DOM tube. So this is our new upright. Just kind of show you guys how that fits. It's gonna be something like that. And then I gotta make another one for that side. And then you can kind of see the idea I was talking about for that bottom rad support. So that's just placed there. That's obviously not where it's gonna go by any means. But I'll have to come up with some kind of clever idea to tie them into the power brace. It is gonna be sitting a lot lower than that, but yeah, making progress. Don't really want to have to do all this again, but at least we got the shop to do it, and it is fixable. So, well, that's looking a little better. I've been fighting with it to get a degree here and a degree there, but all in all, she's really friggin' close. I'm too tired to focus anymore, honestly, but I think we're on the right path. Starting to look like a car again. Just bucked those frame rails right back, so we'll have to do a little bit of bracing underneath here, thinking like a triangulated gusset kind of running up to this upright, but we'll see what tomorrow brings. These look obnoxiously long, but once we get the fenders back on, I can get a better reference point on where to start building the bash bar from. It would be pretty ideal if I could finish the rad support and kind of get the engine button back up, just to make sure we're, you know, following kind of what it was before, and everything has its spot. Yeah, I'm too tired. I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. Car's looking good. We're gonna be out tomorrow and pretty much pick up where we left off. So tomorrow's a new day, and car's looking better again. Until then, I will see you tomorrow. I'm going to eat some food and go to bed. Alright guys, been doing a lot of brainstorming and loaded that tube. And I was looking at the car again. As much as it looks like it's back where it needs to be, it really isn't. Let me just explain to you here what's going on. So, I'll grab a tape measure, if I can friggin' find one. Oh, it's over here. Let me grab a tape measure and I'll show you. So if you measure back from the frame rails on this side, which is okay, it didn't take near the amount of hit that the other side did. We have about, I don't know, 30, let's just say 39 1/4. Okay. Now we go over here. If I can loop it in here, sorry, I only got two hands. Okay, let me get that on the firewall. Okay, so we're around the same spot, and we're looking, and it's, let's say, 38 1/4. So it's still pushed back, and this isn't a good thing. Yeah, see, so the rad support might be level, but it's still an inch out. So I'm measuring, trying to figure out what the hell is going on here. Clearly we were in an accident. I'm under that conclusion, but just trying to figure out where it's still bent, because everything looks fine. So I got my angle finder here, and if you're referencing the middle of the tube, kind of on the straight part of it, you can see we are at this angle finder is weird, so I'm not even going to try to explain that to you. Let's just say that's our angle, right? You can see it with our angle finder. Pretty much right on the straight parts of the tube. Okay, go over here, look at this one. The exact same angle on the other side. Alright, on the straight part of the tube, and look at how much we are out. So my hopes and dreams of keeping this upper rad support are pretty much thrown in the garbage now. I like the way that they looked. It took me a lot of effort to come up with that design, but truth be told is I can't live with that. I could live with a couple mil here or there, or a degree or so off, but we're talking an inch. That's a substantial amount. So looks like I have more work to do. I'm going to be cutting off the upper rad support next and making a new tube up top, upper rad tube, and then I will do the lower rad support. So we're kind of back to square one here. Our whole frame pulling machine, it helped. It definitely got it back level, but it didn't pull it out the other way. So I'm just gonna lob it off. It was a bit of a waste of time yesterday, but what do you do? So I'll set up a time lapse and I'm gonna buck this thing off. The tubes that I put in the bottom with those uprights can stay. So we're just gonna make a new tube to kind of take its spot and get rid of all the bends. I can't live with that, and knowing it in the back of my head, it will eat me away at night when I can't sleep. So I'm gonna cut that off right now and see if we can't get this car true again. Just wanted to add one more thing. With all my brainstorming, figuring out that this upper rad tube is still way out of whack. I'm extremely grateful that that 1 inch difference is not in the shock tower. It's in this tube up here, and truth be told, I never recommend anybody doing this. This client wanted to save a bit of money, and we use skid pipe on it just because it's cheaper. When you're not in an accident, it's going to offer the same amount of strength, in my opinion, close to. It is noticeably heavier and is also way more malleable. So it bent, and when it bent, it kind of took everything with it. DOM's designed to take impact. It's a way harder steel. This is what we use for roll cages. You know, if you were to take a piece of skid pipe, grab both ends and bend it, it will make a perfect U. If you take a piece of DOM and you start bending it, eventually it will just start separating on the top. It's not as malleable, so meaning in impact is very hard. It takes a lot to move that, and the rest of this car is going to, from now on, be DOM. I was building off this tube front, like I said, another client had, and from the get-go I should have removed this. So that's my stupidity, and now I have to address that. So let's cut this car off, front end off, something, cut it. Let's just cut stuff. Let's do that. Alright, I don't know if you guys saw that wizardry that we were doing. At Malcolm's Jeep with his winch cable pulled out, and then I put a come along on the end of my winch, or his winch I should say, and then I strapped the back of the car to my truck, and we applied God knows how much, 4,000 pounds maybe of pressure to that shock tower. And then I took a piece of wood, as you probably saw in the time lapse, kind of ran it down, and we're hitting the backside of the shock tower. Gauging from my measurements, we're within a couple mil. I'm trying to fight to find another mil or two on that side, but it all depends on where you measure from, because I've ran straight edges across and I have different reference points, and all in all they're really close. Some of the measurements are the exact same, so I know for a fact that we did pull at 6 mil measuring here, and I was trying to go more, but we could see that this lifted seam here was actually starting to close, and that's when I said let's call it quits there. Don't want to exert too much pressure on it. It wasn't that far out, but I'm way happier with that. It was a lot of effort. Probably took 2 hours of just sledgehammering. My friggin' biceps on fire. But now we can start the final fab work to get this put back together. My alignment's also way out, but I was playing with it at the track, so I don't think that is from the accident. It was more or less from me yanking on stuff and adjusting stuff when the car was still damaged. Now we have it back to where it should be, and wheels look funny. But we'll align it. We'll get a good alignment after, and that's really the least of my concerns right now. I just want to get this car put back together and get this steel welded out. So next thing I want to do is just make an upper rad support, kind of tying these tubes in together up to the other side to replace the piece I cut out. So hours and hours of banging later, we're true again, and I can continue the fab work. So cover the car back up, clean up my mess, and get this top bar bent. All right, slowly making headway. Slowly. Shock tower is back to where it should be, and started basically laying out the upper rad support, which is laid out the same way I do main hoops. Excuse me. I like to figure out the max width that we can go on the tube, and then I like to figure out the max distance, and then basically get a reference point for your angles. So wherever you want your tube to bend is where you want to mark it on the table. So I basically drew out all my math on my fab table, and that's now my upper rad support. I use the old one as a reference, so it's pretty close. Change it a little bit, but for the most part it's going to be the same design. So I got the overall length of this tube cut on the table, and I'm just going to mark it out. I like to start in the center of the tube and work my way out, so if you're growing at all, you have a little excess on either end, as opposed to having excess in a bend area and it looks wonky. So mark out center on that tube, and we're going to do these bends first, and then from there we'll have these legs sticking out and we can do these bends, and hopefully everything looks like it should. So I'm going to do a bit of layout and then throw it in a JD squared and start bending my tube. Alright guys, got the new front built, well mocked up I should say, just kind of sitting on there, so it might not look perfect, but a hell of a lot better than it did. So basically I just got to determine where the rad's going to sit, and then I can adjust my depth from the shock towers depending on where the rad is going to be. Our width ended up being really good, the line's right there. Same on the other side, so it's right underneath the fenders, which is where I wanted it. Gonna have to add new tabs for the fenders there as well, but basically just gonna put the rad in and determine our depths, and then I can lob this section of the pipe off here and pretty much tack it in, make sure everything's level, and keep on keeping on. So let me grab a radiator from outside, slap it in the car, and see what it looks like.